Hi there, this is a spoiler review for X-Men Apocalypse, which is obviously coming out in the States this weekend. We've had it over here in the UK for a week, went to see it, and it's not too bad. It's not too bad. It is a good film. Let's get that straight from the get-go. It is a good film, it's well worth seeing, especially if you liked X-Men First Class and Days of Future Past. It works well with them, it really does. The timeline gets a bit confusing, will probably need to be straightened out at some point. At the end of Days of Future Past, you see Wolverine reappearing in the Xavier Mansion with Storm and Cyclops and Jean, and they're all there as teachers or elder students, you can't really tell which, but you see them all there, which I suppose, if you remember that, takes away some of the tension from this film, because you know they're going to survive because you saw them in the future. And you see Storm as one of the horsemen for Apocalypse in this film, but you know she's going to turn good because she's at the end of Days of Future Past in the mansion. So yeah, I would probably, oddly enough, for a change, I would probably say don't watch Days of Future Past before you go and see this film, because it might ruin it for you. But then if you're watching this review, as I say, it's a spoiler review, then I guess you're okay with that. This film, in the three X-Men films we've seen, as I say, First Class, Days of Future Past, and Apocalypse, I would rank this third. I would still have First Class as number one, Days of Future Past 2, and this comes in a close third. It's very close to Days of Future Past. Like I say, it is a good film. If you're into the comics, if you know the X-Men from the comics, you're going to take some knocks here, because they have altered some of the characters. Some of the plot lines they've tried to take from the comics and they've changed them up. There's been a lot of talk about Apocalypse, and it's not entirely accurate, but I have to say he isn't as strong an enemy as you would imagine he would be. X-Men Apocalypse makes you think that this is going to be a world-ending villain. This guy has the power to destroy our world. But when you watch the film, and although this guy's been around for thousands of years, absorbing powers from hundreds of mutants, however many mutants he's absorbed the powers from, you actually realise that without his horsemen, he could probably be taken down pretty easily. His main power seems to be teleporting everyone around the world to different locations. That's really all you get to see him do. At the end of the film, when you've seen in the trailers all the cities being destroyed, bridges being destroyed, that sort of thing, that's not him. That's Magneto doing all that. He unleashes Erik Lehnsherr's powers. He makes him realise how strong he can be, how he has control of the gravitational forces of the planet. In the comic books, Eric's always known this. He has control of the magnetic force of the planet, so that's how he can fly. Yeah. But it's Erik, it's Magneto who is destroying all of the cities. It's not Apocalypse. It's just standing there watching it all happen. So yeah, Apocalypse is a bit of a letdown, and it's a shame because Oscar Isaac is a fantastic actor. Obviously, we saw him as Poe Dameron in Star Wars: The Force Awakens, so we know he's a good actor. We knew he was a good actor before that, but he can't do the best that he can with this because of all the prosthetics on him anyway. It's hard to tell from his facial expressions what exactly he's trying to get across. Plus his voice has been modulated, so that doesn't help, and it's not exactly given the best lines anyway. So Apocalypse is really just a name. He is a face, he's like the person that everyone has to be scared of, because there always has to be a big bad in any of these films, and that's his role. But in and of himself, not that scary really. when we get to, as I say, some of the storylines have been changed. Probably the most major one for me, the most jarring, was Angel. Now, in the comic books, Angel is this playboy youngster who, is the son of this wealthy family, and is going to this established college and university, and then he starts to manifest these wings. So, feeling that he's a freak, his family hide him away in this penthouse, and but that's who he is. He's like a very young Bruce Wayne with a family still alive, who is shielded and hidden away by the family. But in this film, we find him fighting in a cage match in this dirty warehouse in Berlin, East Berlin, and Mystique goes to recruit him to the X-Men side. So it's a totally different character. You don't really bond with him. It's not. All you get to know of him, he is a desperate kid who doesn't seem to have any family, who's in this cage because he got kidnapped by these guys, forced to fight, or else they were going to kill him. And that's what Apocalypse works on to recruit him. His wings get damaged during the cage, one of the cage fights with Nightcrawler, because the cage is electrified to keep the mutants in. So his wings get burnt, and when Apocalypse finds him, he turns him into Archangel and gives him the metal wings that we see in the comics, which are pretty cool, to be honest. I mean, don't get me wrong, Archangel is a very, very cool character. It looks amazing on screen, but it is certainly not the comic book character, so don't go into that thinking that's what you're going to see, because that's not going to be the case. The other three horsemen, obviously Magneto we already know about. Eric Lynch has been hiding out in Poland. He has he has a wife and a daughter, young daughter, and he's working in a steel mill, and he's keeping his head down. When the police find out finally who he is and come to arrest him, and one of the cops has a bow and arrow because they realise they can't use guns because of what his powers are, so they've got no metal on him. So one of the cops has a bow and arrow, and while they're talking, accidentally shoots an arrow not just through Magneto's daughter, but through his wife as well. The daughter and the wife are hugging each other when the cop looses the arrow, and the arrow goes, sorry, I shouldn't laugh because this is terrible, but the arrow goes through the kid and then through the wife. I mean, I don't know if you know anything about bows and arrows. I've done some very novice archery, and I can tell you, even if you've got a 26-pound bow or 30-pound bow, if you pull that to full weight, and you're firing at a target that's 20, 30 foot away, the arrow would probably go in about 3 to 4 inches. Okay, this cop isn't pulling back on the bow. He's not doing the whole, fall the way back thing. He's just holding it at a ready sort of stance, and he accidentally lets it go. But this shoots about 15, 20 foot, goes through the young girl and kills the mother as well. I mean, that's just impossible. That wouldn't have happened. And to have them both killed with one arrow, it just seemed like it was just a quick and easy way. Kill them both, get them done, get the emotional turmoil, turn Magneto bad again. He kills the cops because he uses a necklace from his little girl to kill the cops. But that just seemed like lazy script writing. But then, once again, that's the emotional trauma that Apocalypse needs to bring Magneto on side. Storm, another one of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, they actually went back to Storm's original origin story. In the comics, as a young girl, about 10, 11, 12, she grew up in the marketplaces of Cairo as a pickpocket and a thief. Now, obviously, in this film, she's a lot older than that, but when you first see her, she's a pickpocket and a thief in Cairo. And that's where we first find Apocalypse. They unearth him by accident in Cairo. And so one of the first mutants that he comes across is Storm, and she becomes the first of his horsemen. And the last horseman is Psylocke, who seems to be working she is working for Caliban, who in the comic books, Caliban is a member of the Morlocks, who hide out in the sewer system of New York. And they're like mutant refugees trying to stay outside the government and all that. Caliban's powers is that he can sense and track mutants. Now, in the film, Apocalypse turns up and ends up leaving with Psylocke, who, just as in the film, in the comic books, to be honest, out of all of them, she's probably the horseman who looks immediately recognizable from the comic books. Her outfit, her weapons, how she looks. The actress is absolutely a dead match for the comic books. She really is. And it's, I'm trying to think of what's her name. Let me find her name. Olivia Munn. Now, supposedly Olivia Munn did actually ask that her costume would be an exact replica of the one from the comic book. So that's why, and she does look exactly like Psylocke. However, you have to ask yourself, I mean, Apocalypse has these 4 horsemen now, and the first thing he does is outfit them in new clothes. That's nice, take him shopping. He creates a new helmet for Magneto. So he's got them all nicely outfitted, and whereas the others are wearing proper uniforms, with some armour and that sort of thing, some padding, some leather armour or whatever, Psylocke is running around in what is basically a leotard. So, go figure. But anyway, she wanted to look like the character, so that's what she did. From the X-Men's point of view, if we go over to the X-Men now, I'm going to admit to something. Up till this point, I haven't been impressed by Sophie Turner, who plays Sansa Stark in Game of Thrones and plays Jean Grey in this film. Now, admittedly, I was basing my opinion on the Game of Thrones character, and Sansa Stark is not a really nice character to try and get to grips with or to emote with. She's just a whiny teen who gets on my nerves. But to be fair to Sophie Turner, she's turned that character around this season of Game of Thrones, and in this film, she acts her heart out. I mean, to my mind, this is just my opinion, I think she is better than Jennifer Lawrence. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Jennifer Lawrence just phoning this in, just mailing this performance in, that she couldn't be bothered, that she signed a free film deal with Fox. So this was the 3rd film, and she didn't want to be in the blue makeup, which the studio allowed her to do minimal scenes in the blue makeup. She's only, I think, in 2 scenes where she's completely blue from head to foot. And there's one scene where her face and like her neck and top of her shoulders is blue, but that's it. The rest of the time, she's just in a human, obviously her human guise. And that was because she insisted that she wasn't going to be doing the blue makeup. She was fed up with putting it on, she was fed up with taking it off, and she just had enough of it. So they went with what she wanted. And I honestly think that this is not one of her strongest performances. Is she as bad as a lot of people say? No, not really. I mean, I'll give her a break. She's not going to win any awards for boosting her team's morale when she's giving rousing speeches. She's certainly no William Wallace from Braveheart. But she does enough that I wouldn't say that she's mailing in, but she's very, very close. And you can tell that she's probably had enough of the character now and will be happy to leave. Which is odd, because there have been reports since the film was released that she won't mind coming back. And there was an interview that she gave where she said, and this is third-hand information, but supposedly she said that she, James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender on set got on so well that they agreed that they would only come back and do another X-Men film if all 3 of them were going to be there. Now, let's think about this in context. James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender are two of the best actors out there right now. They've been doing this job for decades, and it shows. The two of them, on any scene they are in this film, they control the screen. Your eyes are fixed on them. Their performance is so strong. Now, Jennifer Lawrence has really only come to the public's attention thanks to Hunger Games. Before that, nobody really knew who she was. And to be honest, if you say to anyone nowadays, even though Hunger Games is finished, what was Jennifer Lawrence in? Despite the other work that she's done, everyone will probably just say, oh, she was that girl from Hunger Games, wasn't she? So where does she come from to say that these two amazing, famous actors that have this long history of acting talent and work are saying, well, yeah, no, we're not going to sign up for another X-Men film unless you're with us, Jennifer? No, I'm sorry. I think this is just a girl who's getting a little bit too big for her britches here. I think all the fame that she's got from the Hunger Games, it's all going to her head, and perhaps her ego is starting to grow a little bit. I'm sure that probably was said on set. I'm sure the three of them were having coffee and they all went, yeah, no, yeah, well, that's fine, Jennifer, that's what we'll do. But let's face it, if Fox went to McAvoy and Fassbender and said, okay guys, we want to hire you on for the next X-Men film, here's a load of money to do it, but we're not having Jennifer back as Mystique, they're going to turn around and go, no? They're going to say, no, we're not going to sign on for X-Men unless you get Jennifer back. I don't see it, personally. I just don't see it. But anyway, that's as I was talking about Sophie Turner. As I say, I think she outacts Jennifer Lawrence in this, and she is a fantastic Jean Grey. We see Jean Grey as more of a youngster. We don't come upon her like we did with the original 3 X-Men films, where she was like in her late 20s, early 30s, or early 30s, late 30s maybe. I can't remember the actress's name at the time. But we're seeing her now as a younger kid, late teens, perhaps early 20s. And she's obviously in their school for gifted youngsters, and she's under the training of Professor X, who can see the untapped potential of her. But we also have some old faces come back. We have the Beast, he's back, which is pretty cool. He's sort of like still backing up Professor X, so that's cool. Havoc is back, although unfortunately he does seem to end up dying in an explosion when the mansion goes up, when Apocalypse comes to kidnap Professor X. So we assume he dies because he was the closest to the explosion when it went off. But this brings me to Quicksilver. Now, in Days of Future Past, it's arguable to say that Quicksilver had the best scene in the entire movie. And I think it's arguable to say he had the best scene in this movie as well. Once again, you get the cool music playing as he rushes around the mansion, saving people, so people don't die in the explosion, the kids don't die in the explosion. And it's a fantastic scene. They do take some liberties with exactly what speed certain items would be going. For example, there's one scene where he's got somebody in his arms, but he throws a desk to break a window so he can go out the window, and the desk is moving a hell of a lot faster than he is or anything else around him. So how certain objects can move faster in this slow motion thing than others, I'm not entirely sure. It just looked weird and out of place, and it took me slightly out of the scene because I was watching this huge desk and I'm thinking, first of all, okay, the desk is in motion due to the explosion, but how can he just push it so it's moving so incredibly fast while everything else, bricks, rocks, furniture, everything else around him is moving incredibly slow? It just looked really weird and just took me out of the scene. But it's still, like I say, Quicksilver is still one of the best characters in it, and he gives you a few laughs, and his scene is perhaps the highlight of the movie for me. Apocalypse attacked the school exploded, Quicksilver had saved all of the kids, and they're all out on the lawn when this helicopter arrives. And Stryker's men jump from the helicopter and kidnap Beast, Mystique, Quicksilver and Moira McTaggart. That's right. But not before Cyclops, Jean Grey and Nightcrawler get aboard the helicopter secretly, and they all get flown to the Weapon X facility up in the mountains. Luckily, they managed to break them out, but with a little help from a guy with claws in his hands. Yeah, Wolverine. And this is a pretty cool scene because you see in, I think it's the second original X-Men film, where Logan's trying to search for his past, and he goes to that dam in the middle of nowhere with all the snow around and the mountains, and he goes to this underground facility. It also looks very reminiscent of the comics, because in the comics you see how Logan was treated in the Weapon X facility and how he escaped. He escaped into the woods, into the snow, with this weird sort of like helmet contraption on, all these wires hanging from him and all that. And that's almost exactly how he escapes from this one. He helps Jean Grey, Cyclops, Nightcrawler and the others take out all of Stryker's men. And then just as he's about to attack the good guys, Jean Grey manages to calm him down and returns some of his memory. And he just turns around and runs out into the snow, and that's the last you see of him. We see the only time that Magneto actually, Apocalypse really uses his power is when Charles is in Cerebro and he locates Apocalypse, and he is basically overridden by the power of Apocalypse. He states in the film, "I have never felt such power before." His eyes go black, very demonic. And Apocalypse uses him and Cerebro to control all the people in charge of the nuclear weapons all around the world. And all the nuclear weapons get launched into space, so none of the humans on the planet can fight against Apocalypse and what he wants to do. So that he succeeds in. But then at the end, he kidnaps Charles because he wants to merge with Charles. For all the thousands of years, he has never come across a mutant with the power, the psychic power, of Charles Xavier. So if he can merge with Charles, not only will he have the powers he already has, but he will have Xavier's power to control anything in the world, anyone in the world, possibly the entire world, just with a thought. And if that happens, it's game over. But luckily, during the transformation, Nightcrawler manages to save Charles. But he loses his hair. Charles Xavier loses his hair during the rescue attempt because they're that far along in the transfer process. And he tries to take on Apocalypse mind to mind. But once again, Apocalypse becomes too powerful for him, and it is only when Jean Grey connects with him and Charles manages to convince her to unleash her true power that Apocalypse is taken down. And we see the Phoenix effect. We see Jean Grey floating in midair with these phoenix-like flames out to either side and around her, forming the shape of a phoenix as she destroys Apocalypse. So the next thing is, will the next X-Men film have anything to do with the Phoenix saga? The Phoenix storyline from the comics? Will we see Dark Phoenix eventually? I mean, before she went bad, she did use her power as the Phoenix for good. So it leaves open some plot lines to see where this goes. But at the end of the film, we see the mansion being rebuilt. Magneto and Jean are using their powers to rebuild the mansion, but Magneto decides not to stay. But at the end of the movie, in the post-credits scene, you see the Weapon X facility again, and some suited guys walk through the facility, take down X-ray pictures of Wolverine's body, take samples of Wolverine's blood out of the freezer, put them all in a case, and close the case. And on the top of the case, it says Essex Corp. Now, it took me a while to remember because I was watching it. I was like, that rings a bell. Why do I know the name Essex in connection with the X-Men? It took me a while. But then I remembered Nathaniel Essex, otherwise known as Mr. Sinister. Tall guy, white skin, black hair, red diamond in his forehead. He's a scientist. Originally, according to the comic books, he was a 19th century, 18th century scientist who made this alliance with Apocalypse for immortality if he would help Apocalypse. But he's always been interested in mutant kind, genetic mutant abilities, and blending them together and trying to build mutants, his own army. Similar to Magneto wanting the mutants to rule the world, Sinister's just coming at it from a different angle. He's using genetics to do it, while Magneto is just using force to do it. But if it is the same, if it is Nathaniel Essex, Mr. Sinister, then it could well be that they're going to use Wolverine's X-rays and blood to create X-23. Now, X-23 is a young girl that we see in the X-Men comics, whose real name is Laura Kinney. Now, when we first see her, she's like 15, 16 years old, 17 years old, maybe. Very, very young. But she's got the same abilities as Wolverine. She's got the claws. She's got 2 claws in her hands, in each hand, and a single claw in each foot. But she's got the regenerative abilities. And so she's aging very, very, very slowly, just like Wolverine. So although we see her physically looking like she's 15, 16 years old, she could be 20, 30 for all we know. But she's, in the comics, she's portrayed as a very young teenager, so we assume that she's actually the age she looks. So what I'm thinking is that the X-rays and blood that are taken from the Weapon X facility, Nathaniel Essex will use to create X-23, Laura Kinney, and we'll see her either in the upcoming X-Force film, where would be perfect for her to be in because she appears and works with the X-Force team in the X-Men comics. So I think that might be what's going to happen there. I hope that's what's going to happen because I'd love to see X-23, and as Hugh Jackman's hanging up his claws as Wolverine, it would make perfect sense to bring her in as a replacement. But there you go. So that's the review for X-Men Apocalypse. Is it a good film? Yes. Is it as bad as... is it a good film? Yes, it is. Is it as good a film as Civil War? No. Is it as good a film as Deadpool? No. Is it as good a film as Batman vs Superman? Yes, it's better than Batman vs Superman. Unfortunately, it is, I'm afraid, for all those DC people out there. I liked Batman vs Superman, but it wasn't a good film. X-Men Apocalypse is a good film, and it is better. It's better written, the acting is better, the editing is better. It just is, I'm afraid. So that's it. So, yeah, if you love the other X-Men films, definitely go and see it. If you're a superhero fan, definitely go and see it. If you're an X-Men fan, you're going to love it. Personally, I am an X-Men fan, so that's why I liked it. But please, go and enjoy it. It's well worth looking at. It's well worth seeing. But as I say, it's not going to be classed as the best superhero film this year, unfortunately, by any stretch of the imagination. But it's definitely a decent attempt, and another strong addition to the X-Men franchise. So let's see what Fox does with it now. It's odd because DC and Marvel have been fighting it out over the last year or so, with the DC fans and the Marvel fans about, what film's better than what other film. Fox have sort of coasted below the radar, and although they're releasing X-Men films, which are Marvel films, X-Men for some reason never get pulled into the battle between the DC and the Marvel fans. It's all like, just keep it low-key, release their films, they're good films, everyone likes them, go on about their business, and leave the fighting between the DC and the Marvel fans above them. They'll just go below and just keep out of it, keep it calm, and let the fight go on above them. But that's smart by Fox. Keep out of the carnage and just write good X-Men films. So we'll have to wait and see what comes out next. Next, I believe, is X-Men X-Force. I believe there's also Deadpool 2. So they should be coming out roughly around the same time, I think in the same year. So definitely be worth watching out for them. You guys take care, and if you've enjoyed this review, please either share it on your Facebook page or click on subscribe on my video here for more reviews and more recaps of TV shows and films upcoming. You guys take care. I'll see you later. Bye.